And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Benched with Bubba, episode 583. Going to recap the week 3 FAAB action across the NFBC, talk about some recent news, some key players that are not playing well, let's put it that way, and much, much more. You can find me on Twitter at BDentrek, BDENTREK, and my host again this week, and for quite a few weeks off and on throughout the season. You can find him on Twitter at Mike_Kurland. Mike Kurland, how we doing, my friend?
Fantastic, Bubba. Always fun to catch up and talk some baseball with you, buddy. As I watch a guy I streamed this week go 0 for 2 to start the game, and it's already like tilting, you know? Like,
yes, and he's got a doubleheader though, so you're good. You get to watch extra at bats today.
So I get to watch him go 0 for 8 with 6 Ks. Great.
With that kind of optimism, yes.
Listen,
that's what you're looking forward to.
If he goes 1 for 8 with a home run, I call it a win. I don't care, but
that's a streaming win. That's a very big streaming win.
It's just one of those things where overreactions are happening. I'm enjoying having them. I don't know about you, but it's just fun to watch. It's fun to like microanalyze every little thing because you have to.
And now my microphone's better because it had me on the wrong microphone. Now you can hear me better. So there's that.
There it is. There it is. I didn't even realize it. You hit that button. I'm like, yep, there it is. There's the Mike Kurland.
Because sorry about that.
Pays for the equipment, so might as well use it, type thing.
Yeah, I do apologize for any inconveniences for those listening early on. I'm going to be echo for that first few sentences, but you have me loud and clear now moving forward.
For all the key information to come, and Mike mentioned overreactions. That's why we're going to hit on a couple players that have not played well at all. And is it worth overreacting to? Some of us, or at least me and Mike, think a couple guys probably are. But we're going to talk about that and maybe ruffle feathers along the way because that's what we do. We'll talk about some injured players. Should you drop them? Should you hold them? Some big conundrums to be had there. And some current injuries before we get into our NFBC. And we got a handful of listener questions too, which is pretty cool. So we'll hit on a little bit of all of that. But before we do that, I know you did it last week, but you're still my guest this week. So I'll ask again. Let everybody know what you got going on. I know you're working on that article for The Athletic, obviously gaining the edge. What do you got going on?
So you mentioned it. Gaining the edge is kind of the big thing. Obviously, the YouTube. I actually might go live a little bit after we finish recording here. So youtube.com/GTE Fantasy or at GTE Fantasy, I believe is how you have to put it in, and you'll find the YouTube. I push like 2 to 3 shorts a day. I do like 2 to 3 live streams a week, at least 2. I'm trying to get a week, and then of course The Athletic. I have an article, pretty much what I do for the patreon.com/GTE Fantasy. Very easy to find my work. I do these, the lineup analysis, the savant recaps, kind of put it all together. I monitor injury news for all the teams as much as I can. I throw it in there. And I also include, pitcher injury news and all that. So we discuss that. We discuss and within these articles, these, 3, lately it's been a daily write-up, but usually I try to do at least 4 a week. It's, team by team, discussing who's hot, who's cold. If there's an injury, who subbed in for him that game, who's likely to get that playing time moving forward, and maybe a little why reasoning if there is something worth digging into, et cetera. But so it's a bunch of that type of stuff. And, we talk about some of that on the podcast here. The article for tomorrow for The Athletic kind of outlines some of the stuff, but the meat and potatoes is on the Patreon. So yeah, that's really what I'm doing, and then obviously I tweet stuff that you mentioned at Mike_Kurland, the Twitter handles where you can get like little snippets of all this and where I link all my work. So there's that.
Yep. It's always good stuff from Mr. Kurland, and it's fun because we get to see the behind the scenes of Mike Kurland, and he's always grinding, finding something fun to talk about. So we're going to talk about some of that stuff on this show, but let's start with some of the recent big news, I guess we could say, the injury news that hit on Monday night. Aces were on the mound, and some aces didn't make it through the game. And we'll start with Corbin Burnes, who, 2 starts back, or I guess 1 start back, depending on how you want to look at it, was looking really, really good against Arizona. He bounced back after 2 rough starts. Looks like things are good to go. He was pitching decent on Monday night against Seattle. But he left after a flyout to J-Rod, holding his left pectoral, which is never good. Called for the trainers, Mike. So I still haven't seen a full report yet on what the prognosis is for Burnes, but in my mind, this ain't good. I don't know what your thoughts are.
So my initial thoughts were wake up, tweet about it, react, and then get told, hey, there's a lot you're missing. I was like, all right, cool. So someone sent me the video. I think it was Zach Wax, actually. Mr. Waxman sent over the video of him talking about it post-game, and Burnes actually heard it while playing defense on tagging the player on a rundown, and it's his left pec. So it's not, not the throwing side, which is kind of encouraging, but this instantly, because obviously Woodruff's like, oh, I'm just going to miss a couple starts. I'm like, of course, Burnes is going to say the same thing, but if you Google it, and I know Google is kind of dangerous, but I don't know what to think with Twitter doctors anymore. Like some of them are really good. Some of them, I mean, I try to look for people who actually monitor this stuff in terms of past, history of this type of thing. But quick look on Google just suggested it could, if it's a minor one, like he says it is, it could heal in as little as 5 days, which would be in line for his next start. But if Burnes missed a start or two, I would not be A, surprised, or B, like overly concerned even. I mean, honestly, I almost hope he does take a start or two off, because he was mentioning in that Burnes was mentioning in the video that it was affecting his mechanics. It was affecting how he was throwing, and he wasn't able to locate, his velocity diminished in that final inning. And you don't want him to push through that and just make it worse. So if it's as minor as he believes, I'm sure we're going to get an MRI on it and get more news. But if it was 2 to 3 weeks, I wouldn't be surprised, but it does sound relatively minor, all things considered, for Corbin Burnes.
Well, we'll cross our fingers there. Just a regular 15-day IL stint would be pretty nice if that's all it takes to lose Burnes, because pitchers are dropping like flies. Some pitchers we wished would drop like flies because their performance is not great, so they might be droppable type thing. But yeah, let's hope it's not the end of the world for Burnes, as we need these aces to ace. Jacob deGrom, he's been ramping up. He's up to 98 pitches in his last start, looking deGrom-esque. Gets a great matchup against Kansas City. He's dealing 4 no-hit innings, going down 5Ks, 50-something pitches. And then he leaves with right wrist soreness. I don't know if he was frequenting certain adult websites, if he was playing video games. I don't know what he was doing the night before, but not what I want to hear from a guy that's already got injury concerns to begin with. He says, if it was a big game, I probably would have still pitched, blah, blah, blah. What's your thoughts on this one, Mike?
Kind of wait and see approach right now, because deGrom obviously injury prone. Wrist connects to the elbow, which connects to the shoulder. You know what I mean? It's just like you start going the wildest routes, because obviously this is a guy that is elite and electric when healthy, but deGrom is obviously known for his arm problems. He was shoving, like you mentioned. He was hitting, I think, on the pitch, that the last pitch of the game that he threw, it was still like 98. The pitch before that was like 100. I went back and watched to see if I could find anything before they came out and said it was his wrist. And deGrom mentioned that his wrist was bothering him all game, and it just got worse and worse to a point where he's like, all right, cool, I'm going to go ahead and just get out of the game, which is fine. So maybe he cut it off at the head, so to speak. We'll see, but you're never optimistic here when it comes to deGrom. And I think he mentioned something about it was just they were side of caution here because of the whole he was afraid it was going to affect his mechanics, just like Burnes. It goes back to any little thing for a pitcher can throw something off, which throws off other stuff, which could lead to other injuries. So at the end of the day, we really are just waiting to see what the prognosis is. But of course, you got to be negative, unfortunately, when it comes to deGrom specifically.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of positivity coming out of that, just because he's always hurt. So I'm concerned, actually, because I feel like they'll just baby him again, and then we're going to back to square one. Now we got to ramp back up, so on and so forth. I guess we'll have to see how it goes. This is why I only have deGrom shares in DFS this season. Can pick and choose my battles in that one. Let's talk about a couple pitchers that are on the IL. And let's start with Brandon Woodruff. The story seems to get worse and worse every time it gets updated. It was like first minor inflammation. I don't expect to be out long. Now it's like he could be out a minimum of 2 months. It's all over the board, Mike. So I don't know if you do a lot of deep research on these guys. Maybe you found out even more information. But what are you doing with a guy like Woodruff? I know you have him on rosters, and he's such a hard drop. But if he's going to start missing 3 months even, it's hard to stash if you don't have the proper IL spots.
So, for instance, you mentioned I have Woodruff. I do have Woodruff in my main event. So my biggest league, obviously, there's no IL spots. NFBC is like that in general in terms of no IL. And you look at everything suggests 2 to 3 months. Like it's in terms of I think there's rumors floating around because he doesn't require surgery, Woodruff might only need 2 months. But with pitchers, there's always setbacks. This is a shoulder injury, so it's not like it's a knee or a leg or it's his throwing arm. That's an issue, With all that being said, I haven't been, I'm obviously waiting, just like everyone else, for this news to drop in terms of a more, because they were supposed to start giving us an outline starting roughly these couple days. So we should get hopefully some news before the end of the week. But I held him this past Sunday just because I'm waiting. I'm in a position where I can hold him. I think it is very position specific too. I'm in a spot where I can afford to stash an injury because Bayo just came back and that was kind of my injury stash in that league. So I think it is team specific, but I would be trying to hold on until we get a more definitive timeline. And the reason why it is worrisome for Woodruff, he did come out and say if this was at the All-Star break, they'd shut him down. But the All-Star break is roughly 6 to 8 weeks till the end of the year, give or take, maybe a little more. So that's why it's I get that, but that doesn't mean he's going to be out that long. I mean, because if he's out for 2 months of the All-Star break, that would have left him 2-3 weeks to return probably. That's almost not worth it for a lot of these guys. So at the end of the day, I do think Woodruff is at least 2 months, which is a tough pill to swallow, but I'm willing to stash for 2 months, but if it comes out, it's like, 3 to 4. Yeah, for me, it's a drop at that point. I think the 2 months is that weird window of, especially right now with what pitching's been, how good he looked. I'm willing to try to hold on to that as long as possible. Again, it really is team specific though. If you have a team riddled with injuries, it's hard to hold on to a guy that long. So really, you have to know your team, know your outlook, see where you're at in the standings, and kind of make that judgment based on your own team. But I'm trying to hold as long as possible here with Woodruff.
Yeah, I'm with you there. The hardest part is they say around 2 to 3 months. I think a ramp up time. Like there's so many things that could go wrong. An easy setback, like you said. Like no, nothing would ever surprise me if all of a sudden it's a 4-month deal and we're just sitting there going, why did I hold him for 2 months? It's one of those things that I think it's a lose-lose situation. Just trying to figure it out with Woodruff, and hopefully it's for the better. But we'll see. Speaking of 2 months absences, let's talk Jeffrey Springs. And this one sucked. He was absolutely filthy to start the season. It was thrown great in the game. He got hurt. He's going to be out for at least 2 months, they're saying. And I'm just concerned that this is a longer-term thing with him because it seems like the reports get worse and worse every time we hear it. So I'm leaning – like I was waiting 1 more week to kind of hopefully get more information before I drop him. But he's feeling like a drop for sure compared to Woodruff. Mike, what's your thoughts on Jeffrey Springs?
So yes, maybe I'm a little more biased because I don't have them in any big spots. I honestly might not even have a share. I should know that. I don't think I do. I was actually a big FOMO guy. I actually entered my last draft of the year wanting him, didn't get him, and it's one of those things where he looked great. Springs looked every bit the potential ace, breakout, that type of guy. And unfortunately, the wording is what has me on that drop, at least dropping him sooner than Woodruff. Because with Woodruff, it's still an unknown, but I'm still leaning drop with him. However, Springs is definitely more of a definitive drop for me, considering they were saying miss at least. The words at least suggests to me this is like the low end of what we could expect for him to come back, with Jeffrey Springs. So not to mention they're a second additional opinions. It could be more than a second. So you're looking at additional opinions, which mean they didn't like what they got the first time. And it is believed that Springs could be dealing with more than just nerve issues. So is there structural issues that causing nerve issues? There's a lot going on there. It's hard. I mean, I get it. And if you want to wait, if you can hold off like a week or two just to get a more definitive timeline, go for it. Obviously, it always goes. I want to stress, it always goes back to what your team outlook is, especially in leagues that don't have IL spots. But Springs is definitely less optimistic than that of Woodruff right now.
Yeah, I talked to Bloomfield about this last week. It's like it happened the same day as our recording. And the hardest part here is it's a nerve. And it's like we make jokes about the nerve of someone. But it's like you don't know how it's going to heal. They're all different. A little tweak could make it set back another week or something. Jason Collette tweeted out that someone had a similar injury. He was out for 2 weeks and he was back. No biggie. But then we see certain guys can miss the entire season because the nerve just never heals properly. It's a very rough situation. As you mentioned, it could lead to other parts of his arm that becomes the issue, and that's when it gets real scary. So a pitcher as young as he has just got an extension with the Rays, which is big for the Rays to do. They're going to take care of this arm. They're not going to rush him back. They're going to make sure he's good to go. If anything, just get him back for the postseason. Like they don't even care about the regular season type deal. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how this plays out. Chris Bubick, figured I'd mention him because everyone's still talking about him. This is a fun one. Probably the most popular name added last week. Wasn't the most added, though, surprisingly. We talked about that last week, but most popular name added. He got hurt. It's a flexor strain in his arm because the velocity was down, spin was down. People were speculating. He said after the game, yeah, he's hurt, and he's on the IL. So for me, it's an easy drop. And I just wanted to bring it up, though, because there's conversations in the Gaining the Edge Discord that some don't think it's an easy drop. So I want to talk about it with you. Why is this an easy drop, Mike Kurland?
Well, it's an arm injury that is on his pitching side that we saw the velocity dip. We saw location issues. It was an ugly start, and he tried pitching through it, and he actually didn't do terrible considering he was pitching through a strain, which a strain for most people might not realize is like a tear in the ligament. It's not just a strain. A strain is a tear, a ligament tear, and it's a flexor strain. Those never end up well with pitchers. There's setbacks. They ramp up. They shut down. I dropped them. I just added them. I was in on them. I got them in my main for $69 because I'm an adult. I think I'm a child that thinks he's an adult, and it was a nice bid just for me to have the nicely drop them. Who do I have now? I think I've replaced him with a $2 Spencer Turnbull. So
hey,
for a total of
Spencer Turnbull now. So look at this.
For a total of $71, I have Spencer Turnbull on my team.
Yep.
Oh God, that's where I'm at. But yeah, you get my point though. It's like I didn't really think twice. It's one of the deeper leagues. Obviously, if you have an IL spot, that's fine. But he's not somebody I'm even prioritizing on my IL a small sample against decent matchups as it was for Bubich, I was buying the changes and I wanted to see how they would carry over start to start as teams adapt and as he faces tougher competition. So I wasn't out on him. And when he comes back, I might be back in on him just because as long as he comes back showing the same stuff. But I don't think there was enough there to warrant a stash in general. And you were betting on the upside. You were already kind of overpaying betting on these changes being legit in the first place. I look at it as like just sunk cost. Cut your losses. Don't get attached to them because you bid up all this money on them and move on to the next guy and hope that you hit gold. I mean, that's all it was. Is you were bidding. I just want. It's one of those things where you were really bidding on the potential. You were really betting on it that these changes being legitimate to be a solid back end rotation guy. Realistically, I think I got Braxton Garrett that same week for like $28 and I overpaid by like almost $20 on him. And that's already proven to be a better investment. So it's one of those things where you win some, you lose some, you got to move on. You really do. I think cutting ties with him is kind of the move here. At least that's what I did. I'm just giving the same advice I did. That's all.
Yeah, I know I'd cut ties with him too, because now you got to hope he comes back with the same velocity, same mechanics that already tweaked his arm. Like that's a concern to me. So we'll have to see how that goes. But something you hit on there, like Braxton Garrett, like Brad Keller, who's the guy we'll talk about today. He was a popular one. It's that time of the year. We've seen guys make about 3 starts. You're seeing new mechanics. You're seeing new velocity. It's like now you got to take your chances now to see if it's worth it and see if it's a long-term deal. Most of them it won't be. That's just the way it goes. But if you can hit on 1 or 2 of those guys that all of a sudden puts together a really awesome 5 to 6 month run that no one saw coming, that's game changer type stuff. So that's why you take the chance on Buick. I'm trying to give a silver lining because somebody did take the chance on him. He got an injury. It sucks. We don't really know. Well, the worst part is, we won't know if it was real. That's the thing. It would have been one thing if he went out and got like shelled and then got shelled again. You're like, okay, it's still the Chris Bubic of old. We just don't know. And that's the worst part about it. He got hurt and it all went the wrong direction real quick from there. You know what's going the wrong direction, Mike Kurland? And we kind of talked about this a little bit last week. It's Tyler O'Neill's playing time going very much the wrong direction. And this is a guy that people were looking for the bounce back this year, power, speed. His ADP was much lower than the previous year, so it could have been a huge discount, yada, yada, all the stuff you want to hear. And it looked pretty positive to start the season. He was playing regularly because Lars Nootbaar wasn't around. Then Mr. Newt comes back, and it's not looking good for Tyler O'Neill. So you are the lineup guru. What are you seeing with this Tyler O'Neill? Not goodness is the best way I'll say it. You're on mute. Be professional, you.
I am on mute because I'm trying not to do background noises as I cough and stuff to the mic. Everyone loves that. Yep. But I appreciate catching that. Otherwise I would have just kept talking. Which I'm gonna do anyway. So Tyler O'Neill. We look at this and it's just there are obviously red flags here. I'm waiting for today's lineup, but you mentioned it. He's not playing every day right now. He was actually benched prior to Carlson having a neck issue, which kept him out of the lineup. And that got him back in a couple games ago. And then it looks like he's stuck from there because obviously I think he had a home run that game as well, which was kind of funny. Like, okay, cool. He's sticking it to him. And then Lars Nootbaar returns, and Nootbaar returns first game and goes straight into center field. And it's like, whoa, okay, why center field? And then you keep looking at the lineup. You're like, wait a minute, Nootbaar's batting 7th or 8th, wherever it was. I think it was 7th. And you look up, you're like, holy crap, they kept Alec Burleson in the 2 spot, which Burleson has been performing and pretty deserving of sticking for now, and maybe that's all it is. Maybe it's as simple as he's performing. This is a way that they can, punish. I say punish in air quotes because you shouldn't be punishing a grown man. But anyway, like that's ridiculous. But who knows? Maybe they're punishing O'Neill for the lackluster hustle / speaking out in public about his displeasure with it. Who knows? It shouldn't have ever made it to us. But with that all said, the trends are like this. You had him sit 2 straight in favor of Nootbaar. You had him as in Tyler O'Neill sitting 2 straight in favor of Nootbaar in center, Alec Burleson in the outfield, along with why am I blanking on the other guy here in the outfield?
Dylan Carlson?
No, not Carlson. Wow. Oh, Jordan Walker.
Walker. Yeah, Jordan Walker.
So
a lot of outfielders in St. Louis.
Yeah. So and Jordan Walker is a natural third baseman, so or at least was, I believe, before he moved into the outfield. But so you have those two. So you have that lineup for 2 straight days. The 3rd straight day against a righty again, because I figured if O'Neill's going to get screwed, he might just be a weak side platoon. We know O'Neill usually moves up in the lineup against lefties, so a platoon spot against lefties made sense at the very least. However, we saw O'Neill get in the game against a righty, but we talked about it off air. What did it take? It took I'm trying to remember who went to Goldschmidt was off. They moved Donovan to first base. They moved Burleson to the DH spot, and that's what opened up that outfield spot, which that's pretty much a fourth outfield type of role. The fourth outfielder comes into games and fills in as other players move around or need days off. So right now, we're going to see if it happens today because they're facing another righty. Does somebody else get a day off today? Newbar just returned. He played 3 straight. Does he sit? We could see, O'Neill play a couple games in a row, but that won't suddenly give me optimism towards his outlook and playing time, because as a fourth outfielder, you are going to play. There's going to be times where you play 3 out of 5, 2 in a row. And if there's a lefty on the schedule tomorrow, he'll probably play against lefties. I'm expecting that at the very least as the righty bat, and they have Burleson and Newbar, who they have platooned in the past. So all things considered right now, the way it's leaning from what I'm seeing is that O'Neill is a fourth outfielder / platoon bat, which is what Burleson was kind of doing, was at least the fourth outfield thing. But now they have all these lefties. They have O'Neill's a righty, stronger against lefties. I could see that's where it kind of leans right now.
And so that leads to the conundrum, as I like to put it, is what to do with Tyler O'Neill. We don't roster, unless you're 15 maybe, but 12 teams and less, not just NFBC, just in general, you don't roster many fourth outfielders to start on your fantasy team. Tyler O'Neill is obviously a different fourth outfielder, because if someone gets hurt, he's like the most expensive FAAB acquisition on the face of the planet if he's available. So that kind of leans to like, hey, I got to try to hold him type thing. But we talk about it time and time again. There's only so many roster spots on a team. And if the guy's not playing and you're just like hoping for an injury, that's why you're stashing him. That's tricky. So and this is a problem I've talked about year after year that I need to get better at, is I don't know when to hold and fold basically with certain players. Like, what's the proper strategy on this? And for me, like, I'd be holding Tyler O'Neill because I know the talent is so great, but I'm not starting Tyler O'Neill either, which is unless I see 3 lefties or something coming up. That's a different story. So how are you approaching this Tyler O'Neill thing? Do you need more to go wrong before you drop him, or is it just like crossing your fingers right now?
Yeah, I'm not dropping him right now. I don't think you can. I don't think it's still a murky situation. Could the situation change in a week? Absolutely. Wasn't Burleson a little nicked up, and he just made his way into as a DH because he was nicked up.
Yep.
So that right there is kind of already reason to keep O'Neill. You can't drop O'Neill, especially because we're talking about a 3-game sample. I would like to, especially somebody, if it was like a lower end player of like, oh, Kerry Carpenter is sitting against righties now. You know what I mean? Like, there goes any appeal and even deepest of formats, but it's O'Neill is just too good of a player to drop even in shallower formats. Now, a 10-teamer with 3 outfields, sure. If you're playing that shallow format, you probably can find great stuff off the waiver wire. So I get that, but he's better than pretty much any prospect you would stash right now who wouldn't be producing at all on your roster. O'Neill's better than most waiver wire options, even in a part-time role. I think O'Neill at the very least just gets parked on the bench. That's kind of what you have to do with him. But like you mentioned, lefties, you probably plug them in, but we also could just see, there's a good chance that we see usage increase at any moment just because he's out of the doghouse. You don't, without an injury or an established, like, hey, this is what's happening moving forward for the foreseeable future, I think you hold tight for now. But the leash is getting shorter, if nothing else.
Exactly. It's definitely one to be, tread cautiously with right now and just be ready, because the other caveat I'll say is Jordan Walker's really not crushing the baseball either. Like, his underlying stats are okay. They look good, but you could see a world where somehow like he becomes the odd man out and O'Neill gets some playing time as a right-handed bat type scenario. So there's a lot of moving parts there. I guess the most concerning part for me is, besides multiple outfielders, is how vocal Ollie Marmol and the Cardinals have been about the attitude, quote unquote, of Tyler O'Neill. That part concerns me. So let's just hope for a trade. Let's just make it best for everybody. Let's move things around. Let's talk about another starting pitcher that I try not to take victory laps this early in the year, but I told you guys, and I wasn't the only one. Kurland did as well, and there were some others. Alek Manoah, folks, he's not great at baseball. I'm just going to say it nicely. He's a big guy. He's a Lance Lynn type that will accumulate innings for you at times, pitches to a lot of contact, and ain't that great in general. Like, he's got 4 starts this year. 3 of them he hasn't even gotten through the 5th inning. He's given up 5 earned runs or more in 2 of those 4 starts. He's walked 4 or more in 3 straight starts. He hasn't struck out more than 5 in any start this season. It's been pretty abysmal for Alek Manoah, Mr. Kurland. So what do you got on him? Because I know you've done a little savant dive on him.
Yeah, I actually wanted to look more into the two strike stuff. That's a Toby. I have to shout out Toby for that one.
It's a great thing that I never even thought of until he mentioned it one show.
Yeah, it was like a couple years ago when he mentioned. I was like, oh man, I gotta start. And so I actually meant to look into some two strike stuff. Some who's starting out most 1-0 counts, like stuff like that matters because that plays into the whole control issue. But I digress. We can get into that another time. But for now, from what my notes say about Manoah, I posted this to the Patreon, so you get a little sneak peek here. Obviously, the last start, he continues to allow too many hits. The velo was slightly up, but still down pretty much a tick across the board, like in the main pitches from last year. Leaning heavier on the slider and sinker than in 2022, and both are getting hit rather hard. And a lot of that goes back to the command. His command has been abysmal. Manoah has like nearly 7 walks per 9 right now. I think he's walking more than he's striking out. And he's leaving a ton of pitches in the zone. If you look at the heat maps, it's like all red in the middle of the zone where you don't want things. What I don't understand is why is he kind of doing the opposite? He's going the way of like of what's his face over there, Barrios, where it's like Barrios was kind of this guy who it feels very Barrios. That's why I was like, I think I tweeted Manoah is 2023's version of 2022 Barrios, basically. Like it's just what it reminded me of because that two seamer's getting crushed. He's not swinging, and more stuff from Manoah is he's not inducing as many chases this year. His swinging strike rate is also down, both of which are not only lower than his typical outputs, but below league average as well. So pretty much what I'm getting at, all that fancy mumbo jumbo for Manoah is that he's earning his crappy production right now. Yep. And it's unfortunate. Maybe I would say maybe weather's playing a part. Maybe he's ramping up still. There always are paths to bouncing back, but
he's played back-to-back games in a dome.
I'm trying to be optimistic.
Throwing it out there.
Yeah, I do recall his last start being in the dome. I didn't realize it was back to back, but I do. And that's another thing that the ballpark is no longer as pitcher friendly after moving in the fences. Even if they're not all going to be home runs, those are going to be doubles that were flyouts last year. You know what I mean?
He's given up 1.86 home runs per 9 right now.
And is he this bad? No, but I don't think he's going to end up at this point. You'll be lucky to break even on his draft. He would have to turn it around on a dime at this point to produce positive ROI. So I think
he's not an ace. He's not an ace like people wanted him to be.
I think that's the big takeaway here is I don't think he's going to take that step forward. People thought he might. And I mean, I don't want to rule that out as a possibility. I just don't think it's going to happen anytime soon is the issue. So I don't think you drop him just yet, but he is getting to a point where he's not an auto start anymore.
Yep. Yeah, he's going to be 26, so he's still young. So like to Kurland's point, don't rule it out. I don't see it happening this year, but maybe down the line you get one of those like Robbie Ray seasons where he's a pick 190 and all of a sudden bounces back in a big way. Who knows? Like that kind of stuff's possible. But people thought he was an ace. Like Kurland mentioned a few things. He has a K to walk percentage of 16.5% K, 15.5% walk. Less than ideal. 10% swinging strikes, average, like he's doing his thing, but just a lot of noise going on with him right now. I am very concerned. That's why I kind of compared him to Lance Lynn. I see a lot of similarities there. We'll see good starts from them, but we'll see a lot of starts where they just leave their stuff hittable. Lance just throws a lot of fastballs, and it gets ugly at times. And Lance gets drafted around pick 170. Maybe that's where Manoah should be getting drafted. Like that's just the reality of the situation. Let's talk about another pitcher that I'm going to keep my comments to myself on, but Sandy Alcantara, it's not good. Not good at all, Bob. Last 2 starts has been a bit rough for the Marlins ace, the NL Cy Young award-winning Alcantara. He allowed 4 earned over 6 innings against Arizona his last time out. They struck out 9, though. Silver lining. Prior start, 9 runs over 4 innings at Philadelphia. It's been a rough go for the Sandy man. So what's your thoughts on Alcantara?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just a little bit of unlucky. I mean, not that we all – I think you and I, when we did the Marlins preview, I think we were both off on cost for Alcantara. Yep. And I think that was just a matter of not necessarily believing that the strikeouts would be there. But the innings, it was like there was just comps going for a little cheaper. Like Luis, not Luis, Julio Urias. Which Urias is the pitcher?
Julio Urias, yes.
Urias? I thought it was Urias. See, I don't know.
It's probably Urias. I don't know. It's Julio, though. I know that much.
Yeah, okay. Well, we got that part right. I always mix, I'm always looking at hitters. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You get my point. That was kind of the comp. And I think Simeon was one of the ones I heard with that comp because similar skill sets, one going out cheaper with more win potential, etc. I get it. Anyway, so if we look at just last start, the velo inched back up, which was, it wasn't necessarily down a whole lot, but seeing the velo come back up, it's still encouraging, especially where it was. You had more swing and miss stuff last start for Alcantara. Unlucky with the overall strand rate on the year. Alcantara has a 45.8% strand rate. That's usually league average is like 73, 74%. So obviously he's not, I mean, the Marlins defense isn't the best either though. So there is that. The BABIP is 20 points higher than his career typical BABIP. So not a lot of BABIP issues, but just a little above average. So again, just goes back to maybe the BABIP is part of the no shift thing. You know, that's an issue. A lot less ground balls though. So maybe is he giving up harder? Maybe he's trying to keep the ball off the ground, knowing that there's no shift. I don't know. Maybe it's just again some bad luck there. But we're talking about a 40.5% ground ball rate compared to over 53% the last 2 years for Sandy, and overall less chases, but the same swinging strike rate and CSW from last year. So he's allowing less contact. It looks like I'm trying to think. So he's getting less chases, but overall the swinging strike stuff and the called strike stuff is pretty much in line. I don't think it's gonna be a long-term issue this year. That's like a little mini dive on him. Sandy, by him I mean Sandy Alcantara. But obviously there are some things. I'm just wondering, was the BABIP held in check because of the shift a little bit? Is he trying to depend less on ground balls? Is he pitching more to fly balls, trying to take advantage of the home park and less, dealing less with the shift? Or is he just missing a spots and the ball is getting elevated? I don't know. That's too early to say. I'm sure that'll take a little more deeper of a look.
Real quick, I got something funny for that though, which is just you did the Savant deeper dives. I'm just looking at like game logs on Fangraphs. So his first 2 starts were his good starts, a 178 BABIP, 125 BABIP. His last 2 starts were his bad ones, a 529 BABIP and a 400 BABIP. The funny thing is his ground ball rate was 20% and 33% the last 2 ones, the bad starts. The good starts, 41.7 and 64.7. So the shift had nothing to do with that almost, if you think about it. That's kind of scary. At least, maybe he did. Maybe the 30% ground balls went through the shift. Who knows? But if you do the math, like I'm saying, like his ground ball rate got cut in half.
So it looks like that it looks like that it's just unlucky in terms of like he's not getting those ground balls that he usually does. Maybe pitch, and that could go back to the whole chase rate being less for Alcantara. Maybe players aren't chasing as much. So if they're not chasing as much, they're not able to make as much weak contact, which would lead to more ground balls out if you make contact on pitches outside the zone, et cetera, et cetera. You have to look deeper into these aces because because stuff like this matters because they are just one adjustment off from being back to who they were. Yeah. There are people victory lapping it, and I guess that's okay. I do think Alcantara will end up being a solid top 15 pitcher. I know people were drafting him in top 5, but I think part of drafting Alcantara in the top 5 was knowing you're getting the innings and the security, and I do think that's still going to come. And I think people are overreacting a little bit, thinking that he can't just be that top 15 plus or so guy. And I do understand you expected better, but I think you were drafting him at the ceiling. That was kind of our argument, is you were drafting him at a ceiling. And Alcantara is more likely to be closer to 10 to 15 overall than he is to be to 1 to 5 overall. So unfortunately, that seems to be the case, but we'll see. I mean, Alcantara could easily go on a huge run and be worthy of that pick. It's just a matter of correcting some of these minor issues. I guess it's a very long-winded way of me saying I'm not overly concerned about Sandy, but it is a little bit of an issue right now. And I think the ground balls are kind of the biggest thing from between the game logs and just looking at some of the underlying stuff.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned about Sandy overall, but like you nailed it. What got to my point preseason was he has to accumulate by pitching quality innings. And if he has any hiccups at all, like I said, if it's a half an inning per start, even you accumulate that over 30 starts, and he's not the same guy. For his ADP, he's now Framber Valdez. Like, why wouldn't you not take Framber Valdez? Like, he's an accumulator that went a lot later. Like, there's situations like that was my thing. It was never Sandy is a bad pitcher. It was more like Sandy has to basically be perfect to give you the stats for where he's getting drafted. I'm with you on thinking he'll get back because, like, while you were talking, I just kept looking at his game logs, and there's like zero consistency from start to start that would speculate. Like, even like the quality of contact metrics, the barrels, the hard hits, they varied from both the good and the bad starts. They were all over the board. Where like Manoah just stands out. Like, he just says it's all going haywire for Alek Manoah. Where at least Sandy, it's like there's this, there's that. Like,
you can see paths of positivity.
It could have been like a double play ball away from being out of it, which he was getting the previous year that he didn't get this year. Like little minute things where Manoah is just not good right now.
He's BP right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Last one I want to talk about here, or we want to talk about here, is Grayson Rodriguez, because this is a polarizing one, I guess. Everyone loves their top prospect pitchers. He's not been great. He's given up 9 runs in his last 2 starts. He's only gone 5 innings in 2 out of his 3. Strikeouts have been there. That's been positive. I can't remember who tweeted out, if it was Colette or MLB Dream or somebody on Twitter, maybe even Alex Fast. The first inning, he gets destroyed. Everything after that, he's been fine. Like one of the best pitchers in baseball. So that's just a young kid in my mind, still figuring things out, maybe getting the adrenaline dump in the first inning to like, hey, kid, you've been here now. Breathe. It's like the old Bull Durham, like the old Galapagos lizard breathes through its eyelids. Kid, relax. Like the rose goes on the front. Like figure those things out, kid. But what's your thoughts on Grayson Rodriguez when you looked into him?
So I'm trying to actually pull up those splits about the first inning stuff just because I'm curious. But in the meantime, while it's loading,
what
Grayson Rodriguez, the strikeout stuff seems legit. Well, if you go under pitcher, we'll just go through this. Pitcher on Fangraphs, you go under splits, and it should show you by inning stuff under splits, I believe, or through the first time through the order stuff. I'm trying to remember how to first through the order, second. You can see that. I'm trying to remember the inning stuff. There's a way to do it. I have to play with that. Anyway,
I'll find the tweet while you talk.
We'll talk. Yeah. Either way, I'll look because I know there's a way to do it, and you can. It's pretty much through search functions and all that. Anyway, I digress. People listening, there's someone listening like Toby or something. It's like you do like this, you idiot. I'm like, yeah, well, I forget. Anyway, real quick, Grayson Rodriguez, strikeout stuff seems legit. I'm reading word for word. Above average O swing and swing strike rate, which is great. So he's getting the chases, he's getting the swing strike rate, the O swing being 37.1%, league average always roughly about 32%, give or take. And then swing strike rate, league average is usually around 11 and 11.5% in between that range, and it's 13.1%. So you're getting above average swing and miss stuff in the zone and out of the zone in terms of chases for Grayson Rodriguez. You're also getting unlucky strand rate. Again, I like to reference strand rate because people might not realize that league average is 73%, give or take around there. And players, up or down early on, that can explain maybe he's getting some bad luck hits through the middle. Like we talked about Sandy being a thing, but his strand rate was only 59.4%. Rodriguez, for Grayson Rodriguez, that is, and his BABIP was 378 right now. I'm sorry, but a guy with that type of stuff is not going to keep that BABIP up. That's way too high. And if you look at Grayson Rodriguez, his FIP, his XFIP, his Sierra are all below 4. Those are all underlying indicators suggesting that he should have better days ahead of him. So Grayson Rodriguez is a guy that is underperforming, and the stuff is legit. I think there are better days ahead. And if you are in a trade lead and you can buy low, I would do so. And lastly, for Grayson Rodriguez, if you, in spite of a 10.8% walk rate, league average being 9.2 right now, at least when I looked at Fangraphs yesterday when I made these notes, he has so there's that. He, in spite of that walk rate, he still has a K-minus walk rate of 18.5%, which is 5 points above league average. So even with the walks, he's still able to have really good stuff, get the strikeouts, and it's all kind of there. Just, again, some bad luck. And you mentioned the first inning stuff, which I'm sure you probably pulled up by now, so I'll stop talking.
Yeah. It was a combination of MLB Dream on Twitter and Locked On Orioles on Twitter. So Dream puts out the first inning numbers in his first 3 starts, an ERA of 21, a slash line of 429, 556, 929, 3 Ks and 4 walks on 444 BABIP. That's his first inning production through 3 starts. After that, though, after the first inning, so you accumulate every other inning after the first, he's thrown 11 in the third innings. He's struck out 16, walked only 3. That's much better than the 3-4, the opposite ratio, and has a 3.18 ERA. So literally, to me, and it might be way more in depth than this, it's a young kid that's amped up to be on the mound to start a game. That's the way I see it, because like he's just, if he's walking too many guys or this, that, or the other, he's like overthrowing. I don't know. To have a BABIP that dramatic in the first inning, he just needs to get locked in on the first, is the way I see it. Get calmed down or something, and he could be good. And then it goes to all your points about how he's all the underlying stats and everything point to a pretty darn solid pitcher. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you can buy Grayson Rodriguez, I'd be looking to buy Grayson Rodriguez while people are in panic mode. And then also, I didn't mention it, I would sell Alek Manoah to someone that still thinks he's an ace. That's my 2 cents on those two.
Now, it's funny that you mentioned this, because like, even you just mentioned first inning. If you look at just his first, second, and third time through the order splits, which you can find on Fangraphs under the splits tab, so I got that part right. Just looking at that, you notice, wow, he's crushing it second and even third time through the order. He's having more success than the first, and which is the opposite. Usually a pitcher, as they go through the order, gets worse. He's been getting better. Now, his third time through the order isn't spectacular.
But most guys aren't. Even the best pitchers,
exactly.
That's like the worst.
But he still has an XFIP a full run lower than his first time through the order. So he's crushing it in the second time through the order. Third time through the order kind of regresses back, but that's where he should be having issues. So I think better days are going to come for him, especially as he adapts, gets comfortable, and again, breathe through the eyes.
Yep. For those that know that movie, you're welcome. It is. I'm
Yeah.
not going to say it. If you're a baseball fan, you better know
It's
that
stuck
movie.
in my head now. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great movie. Hey, go grab some pine meat. On that note, we will talk FAAB. I like talking to these players early on. We'll probably do this throughout every show we do, just to kind of dig in for players. But as you guys know, we recap the week in FAAB, trying not to laugh too much when I see minimum bids of $1 in certain leagues. But we do 12-team NFBC OC RotoWire Online Championships because it kind of gives a wiggle room between a lot of people play 10 to 12. Mike plays 15, so we can give his main event insight there. And let's give our thoughts on these players kind of going forward, because especially this last week, it's a lot of young names. Young names are getting the call. So we'll start with the most added player because he was not drafted anywhere, so he had to pitch last week. He was added in 205 online championship leagues. That is all of them, folks. He went as high as $453, as low as $21. So there's great keep him honest bids out there. And that is the only Taj Bradley, one of the top pitching prospects in all of baseball. Looked pretty good in his first start. I know you got 3 runs, but he pitched 5 strong innings, I thought. There's a lot to like there. There are some holes in that rotation with Jeffrey Springs going down, obviously. I did see a report before we recorded that Zach Eflin threw a successful bullpen, and he could be back as early as Sunday. So that's something to monitor. And Tyler Glasnow will be back sooner than later. But I think it's Taj Bradley's spot unless something goes horribly wrong, Kurland. So what's your thoughts on this ad this past week?
So I thought it was very team context driven. I do think he's a solid player. I do think he's legitimate. Actually, I'm not betting against the skills. I personally was not going hard for him, but that's because of how I've set my team up in terms of having it had a strong start. Not that I couldn't have made it better. I think me and Guilds were going back and forth on Twitter, and yeah, obviously you want to build off a strength. If your team is strong in this, you want to build off the strength. But what I looked at was like, of course, as soon as I say it the same day, I have Kevin Gossman and Jesus Luzardo and Brian Bayo, remind me that I was wrong to be this confident in my start, but I digress. My point being is that I didn't have the true need for go in and blow my FAAB, so to speak, in a 15-teamer. So I looked at it like, he's definitely worth it. What I might have been wrong about was somebody pointed out to me how they've been treating their starting pitchers, which the Rays, I always feel like they jerk around their players a little bit, but maybe it's more so with the hitters, because when they brought up McClanahan, he was young and it was to stay. When they brought up Baz, it was to stay. I believe, or did he get sent down once or twice? I don't remember, but he was young. And I think they were still, and so I was like, maybe they just don't do that anymore with their pitchers. When they bring them up, they bring them up. I just don't trust I think part of it was I just didn't trust the Rays. They're bullpenning a game. They have the opener in Fleming, which that's not a spot they should be holding on to, but it is one right now. I could see them manipulating his innings. I know he pitched like over 130 last year. Trust me, I've heard it on every podcast. I get it. I'm not here to argue that. It goes back to the Rays managing innings, the Rays going ahead, and they have aspirations for a deep playoff run. I could be easily very wrong here, and I will say, and me saying I'm not doubting someone's like, oh, you're playing it smart, you're playing both ways, you didn't go after him, but you're talking him up. That is true. I can sit here and take the win either way, but I will take it as a loss if he does well and stays up all year because I was not in on him when I should have been. That's a bigger loss than liking a guy and just because I like a guy doesn't mean I'm right because he did well. Liking a guy means I should put my money where my mouth is and go add him in my leagues.
100%.
So I will take the loss if he is up more than I anticipated, and we did get him. We did go out. We in our little joint league that we're doing the OCQ. We went out and got him. So I do have a share, right? But
yes, you do.
I have a quarter of a share. No, but that's what I'm saying. And that was the league we lost Woodruff. That was the league we lost O'Neill Cruz, and it's
team dependent stuff.
And it was also a league where I'm like, well, let's just go for it because why not? Because you have to win the league to get the entry. So, but again, I do think I don't fault anybody for going big on him. I do think Bradley's a good starting pitcher. I also, part of it was I am expecting other guys to come up. Like, is it Bibby is how you say it for the Guardians?
I've heard Bibby. I think it's Bibby is what I hear.
I think it's Bibby.
Yeah.
And then they also have I know a lesser doesn't have the same the name value that he used to have, but what's his face for the Cardinals throwing absolute
Liberatore.
Thank you. He was a former name from the Rays.
From the Rays.
Too.
Yep.
Yeah.
From the Rays.
So that's one of the things where he's throwing the harder velocity. He's having a strong year. Those are two guys that I kind of put in the same grouping with Taj without having. And by then, I'm sure other fantasy managers are going to want to be in on him, and I'll probably have to spend just as much. But I do think that I might be able to get those guys a little cheaper as more FAAB is getting spent. And I'm hoping to kind of have some of my FAAB put away for those guys. So that's kind of where my head's at, thinking I'm going to go in on players, but I have bigger needs. I want to save. I've been kind of aggressive early with the FAAB. I want to save some because you do need some FAAB to get through. It's only week 3, week 4, depending on where you play and all that. So I kind of just, that's all it is with me, was I was being patient with them, but I don't know. I do like Bradley, and I think a part of me is gonna regret not going for him, but we'll see. Maybe I'll be right. It's more of a gut feel of like I don't trust the Rays, and maybe it's a terrible way to live. Like, not just, I gotta start betting on talent, and especially now with the new rules.
Yep.
That you've seen teams being more aggressive with their call-ups. I'm just not used to it.
That was a big part for me. That was a big part, was the new rules. The Rays are bringing them up. They already brought them up once, so they want to utilize them. It seemed like the perfect storm. The Rays could always Ray. I think there's other pitchers that should be out of that rotation instead of Taj Bradley when guys return.
Oh, absolutely.
Like where Guilds was, I think it was a great back and forth. You guys both had great points in that conversation. Now it's just like, what's the team going to do? Because none of us know that. That's the problem. I only won him outside of our league in a tout for 121. Everywhere else, all my OCs, we'll talk about it later. He went for like, I think, well over $200. Like, I wasn't even close in those leagues. So yeah, it's not like me to go super crazy and bid high. So I was just out, but I think he's a very, very talented young arm. I think he's going to be really, really good. The question is, how long is he going to be up for? He should be up for at least 2 months, I'd say. He should be in the Jeffrey Springs slot. That's my 2 cents, but a lot can change until then.
Well, when you look at that team real quick, I just pulled it up. I think that's what I was. So right now they only show 4 starters, and Springs is still one of the starters. So if you take Springs out, put Taj in, but then you still have to add Eflin back, and then you have to add Glasnow.
They've done 6-mans before. Maybe they go 6-man. They can use that,
and that would make sense. Not only would that keep their guys healthy, but then that also gives them the ability to keep Taj limited in innings and other guys limited in innings. So maybe they go 6-man. And I know 6-man is becoming the more popular thing these days with pitching staffs. Yep. That's why you can't. It's just one of those things. Can you bet on that? I do agree that here's the thing. I agree that Taj Bradley belongs in that rotation over a Josh Fleming. There's no debating that. The thing is, the
Fleming spot is the weird spot because that's been a opener spot. It's been a Fleming
opener / Fleming. Yeah.
So that can just be cut out right there, like done. You're out of here. Like,
but will they? For some reason, like that's what I'm getting at. Like
I'm with you.
They should. They should. Absolutely, they should. There's no question about it. I just don't know if maybe that's me playing scared. Maybe I'm just playing too scared. That's all. I know I'm harping on it. It's like I don't want to be so wrong on this one. I have a bad feeling I'm going to be so wrong on this.
It's the fun of this game that we play.
Oh, fun.
Another prospect. There are a few of them here. Zach Neto, I believe, is his name. Picked up in 176 leagues, shortstop for the Angels. He was the number one. They're not their first round pick in 2022, so the first member of the 2022 class to come up to the bigs. He's got a decent hit tool, a little bit of power, a little bit of speed. They already announced he'll pretty much be the starting shortstop from now on. They sent David Fletcher down to the minors, but Neto picked up 176 leagues, as high as 351, as low as 4. I was not super aggressive on Neto. I didn't, but to be fair, I wasn't desperate for shortstops where we've talked about it on last week's show and everyone else talked about it. That position has gotten decimated. So you had to spend if you needed guys. There's no doubt about it. I just wasn't like what I saw in his hit tool was not overwhelming to me. So what about you?
I looked into him a little bit. It was just such a limited track record is the problem. We have 43 games at AA since being drafted. Sorry, between AA and single A since being drafted. Only 37 games in AA since being drafted. I think is it Neto? I thought it was Neto. I could be wrong.
Maybe it's Neto. I'm horrible at things, so yes.
Well, Zach Neto, whatever. That's what I'm gonna call him. I apologize. Maybe I'll get it right by the next time. But there's a little bit of power, a little bit of speed. The plate skills seem to be there. Obviously, the K rate being 23.5% in AA is less than desirable. It's only 23% early on, so he's not striking out more. Maybe you would have expected him to be striking out a little more at the pro level, considering usually that's how it works. The higher level you go, the higher the strikeout rate. Whatever, we'll see if that carries over. But he's led off the last 2 games. Granted, both leadoff spots have come with a major piece.
Neto, by the way.
It is Neto?
I looked it up, yes.
Perfect. So Zach Neto. It's actually pronouncing the T is hard. Neto is what I want to do. But Zach Neto, or was that? Oh, so he was leading off. It's okay. It happens. I'm used to it. The whole being going off tangents is my thing. He's led off the last 2 games, but one game was with Tyler Ward out of the lineup. The other one was Mike Trout out of the lineup. Maybe they're just trying to get him acclimated, get him some at bats. But maybe he's there to lead off. I don't know. We haven't seen a full lineup just yet, so there is that. However, I don't I'm with you. I wasn't aggressive, didn't go out and get him, and a lot of it was just no need for shortstop. I do think it's a great upside play, but I think the cost, this was a get your guy thing. You had to really believe in it, or really just betting on the upside, because again, people that lost O'Neal Cruz, this was a skill set that you're getting back in theory with Neto. So
yeah, that's 100% on the same page with you on that one. Same with this next guy, Edward Julian, and I did look that up last week, so I know that's how you pronounce that one. Edward Julian, the second baseman for the Twins, big time prospect, added 169 leagues, as high as 301, as low as $1. To me, he's like a 15-15 guy with some maybe more upside. He's still young, so he could be more. But with him, similar like your Taj Bradley thoughts, there is Polanco back maybe by the end of the month. There's a lot of moving parts. Let's say we have a lot of moving parts in Minnesota. And Julian had the one big game where he had a single and a homer. He's gone 0 for the rest of his time. So I am seriously concerned about him sticking. Let's put it that way.
yeah, that's where I'm at. I don't really need to add to it. I think you outlined it. You know, Gallo returning, Krylov returning. Not that these guys directly affect him, but that's just less spots on the roster for him to take up. And then you have Polanco, which is the big one. And Julian was also not the best defensively. At least that one game, he looked pretty awful. And I've heard the announcers talking about how he's just not a great defender. And if you're not a great defender and you're not hitting while you're up, I have a hard time believing you're going to stick. And not to mention that they're not going to keep him up to bench him. They're not going to keep him up to keep him in that like reserve role. I don't think that's what Nick Gordon's for. They are going to. And on top of that, if I would say, oh, he could DH, but they're utilizing DH for Buxton and others to keep him healthy. So there's a lot going on there, and I'm a lot less Taj, I feel like I might have been more wrong with my initial thoughts of it than before. But Julian, I don't have any real second guessing there in terms of like why I avoided him this time around. Carpenter got an RBI double today. I'm happy. Already a win. All right. Anyway,
things are looking up for you.
Yeah.
Let's
Thanks.
move on to Johan Oviedo. This was a fun one in our chats we had. I streamed him last week. I think I kept him in most leagues. I have him in. He was added in 126 leagues, the fourth most added player last week. To me, it's a week too late. Max 107, lowest of 1. I say a week too late because his matchup this week is at Colorado, and then he gets the Dodgers next week. He had his cushy schedule, so now you got to kind of sit and wait, or just cross your fingers and hope, hey, just like you did with Bubick, hey, he's fixed. This is who he is. Like, pick your poison. Not sure I want to pick my poisons with those offenses, but what's your thoughts on Oviedo? I know you've dug in on him.
Yes, Oviedo. Did we bring him up last episode? I thought we might have. I wasn't sure.
We might have briefly, just because no, we did, because I added when we did my ad drops. I added him for the 2 steps.
He had some intriguing stuff in his profile, you know, leaning more on the slider this year. Oviedo has been a little different of a movement profile on the slider. The pitch mix as a whole has really helped him in terms of getting the strikeouts and all that. But I'm in on the changes, but like you mentioned, at Colorado, I think it's a 2-step next week, but one of them's the Dodgers. Like, oh man, I think the other one's the Nationals though, so maybe you take that chance. Bad win context though. I think there was another bad. I think there was I think the big thing with him was like 3 out of the next 4 games were really tough, or even 4 out of the next 5. I had his schedule written down. I was like, oh, that's a tough run. That's one of those things where you got him ahead of time, great, but starting you might not. That's another thing. Just because you get somebody, this is gonna be a quick tangent. You realize you don't have to play them right away, right? Like pitcher, hitter. People feel the need to start these guys. Like, oh, I went out and spent this money on them. I'm gonna start them. No, I get what you're doing, and obviously you start them if you have to. But like for instance, with Bubic, I didn't start him that day against the Braves. I knew better. I refuse unless I had a 0. I would have started him over a 0. But just because you have a guy, just because you go out and get a guy, doesn't mean he was a must start. So just a reminder that Oviedo, right?
Yes.
Oviedo.
Yep.
Oviedo. Man, people are probably sick of me messing up these names. Oviedo is a guy that you want to have on your team, but you don't want to start in cores. The 2-step I'm okay with because of that. I think it's the Nationals side of things. I believe he gets the Nationals on the second half of that. So I'm good with that one. And then after that, I think there's again another tough start. But if he shows these next few starts that he's just like dominating no matter what, then sure, he enters that conversation of I'm starting him no matter what. But yeah, he's a guy that a lot to like. I think this, unfortunately, obviously everyone else liked him this week. That's why the price went up as much as it did. But yeah, he's a guy. The goal is like I'm hoping this week's Oviedo or last week's Oviedo is gonna be this week's Turnbull. I'm crossing my fingers that Turnbull's the thing.
To be fair, like you said, Oviedo next week's at Pittsburgh at least, which is nice, and then he goes to at Washington. So Yeah, it's not the worst case scenario.
Yeah,
This is
just
fun.
wins are tough with him. That's all. That's
No,
no.
that's
Like,
going to be very
that's
tough.
same with all.
Rob Silver put a tweet out today because he talked about wins at First Pitch Arizona, and basically the simple part was just take players on good teams. But
It's
he
hard to
mentioned
find those on the wire.
yeah, exactly. He said last year the Pirates starters combined for 22 wins last year. That was lowest in baseball. So far, the Oakland Athletics starters have 0 wins, 0 through 17
Ooh.
starts. He says he says the odds of them getting to 22 are very difficult right about now.
We have breaking news.
Yeah, that's what we have.
Mason Miller expected to be recalled from AAA by the Athletics. Could start Wednesday.
That's something to monitor. That kid's got some good stuff. I've seen people compare him to this year's Spencer Strider potentially.
Yeah, and now you see. Okay,
There's your Taj Bradley conversation all back for you right now
because they're not calling him up to not start him.
No,
right?
He's there to stick. He's there to stick. They're like, why would you not? Like the A's will sit on time as long as possible unless they want to use a player.
He is 24 years old, almost 25. He's like 24 and a half. So I'm wondering, like, there's not really anything to gain there, but I don't know what to expect here. There's no real, like, I'm trying to pull up. He has no real innings usage in the past. That's a part of the issue. Like 2022, he had what 5, 7, 8, 9, about 14 innings last year.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, this year so far, 8.2 innings. Like, I mean, obviously the stuff's been electric though. The strikeouts, stupid. But how much are 100 innings? Maybe. Like, yeah. I don't know where the innings. I don't know his backstory. Maybe there's more to it than I realized. But the stuff has been ridiculous. Crazy good. It's just a matter of him actually being healthy and pitching enough innings. But we're gonna watch that start. He's gonna strike out like 8 in like 5 innings and get no decision. And you need to realize that you're getting him for his strikeouts, a little bit of ratios, and just know you're not getting any wins, or maybe 5 wins. But this goes back to Taj Bradley. Now, if I feel like I missed out on Taj and maybe I want to get in on Miller, I have that option now. Whereas getting in on both really depletes your FAAB. Not that, but I think Taj is better. I really do. Like, obviously, I'm not gonna
and Taj has the workload behind him as well.
Yeah. So that was a quick look because obviously I haven't done a lot of Mason Miller looks in terms of I didn't think he'd be up this soon, but it's just so limited in the sample size on Fangraphs. I feel like, is there something I'm missing? Did he play in a league that Fangraphs doesn't freaking cover or something? Was there injury?
Well,
I don't know much about him.
I can look this up real quick for you. Baseball Reference has everything, so
they do.
I will go to that because that's what I use for all these players. Mason Miller. I'm guessing it's just been he was drafted in.
I'm just seeing if there's like an
injury. 2021 in the 3rd round from Gardner Webb. He's pitched. Where's the innings? Yeah, he threw in 2022. He threw 16 innings in the fall league, and then he pitched in single A all the way to triple A. Pitched a total of 14 innings. Yes, so he combined for 30 innings if you count the fall league.
Okay, so I'm not crazy for. I felt like the only reason why we went on this little tangent. I know it was kind of like,
wow,
we shouldn't be going on it, but
between college and the minors in 21, he threw 98 pitches. He's never thrown over 100 innings pitched in a season.
That's where the concern comes in, and he's getting called. He's getting called up. He's getting called up on April 18th, or whatever, the 19th. It'll be tomorrow. Oh, don't get me wrong, it's gonna be electric. I'm rooting for him. I actually hope he goes out and shoves, because honestly, I might just avoid him. I might maybe I'm playing with fire here. You know what I mean? Maybe it's not a good idea to be sitting here avoiding all these big names. But how many innings should we realistically expect from him? Not to mention how many. Yeah, the strikeouts are there, but the wins are going to be an issue. Teams are going to adapt. How long in the game does he get? Like 80 pitches a game so they can monitor his workload? Does he go 5 innings? Like, do they let him go a 3rd time through the lineup at all? There's a lot of these questions. Don't get me wrong, but here's the thing with Strider. Strider had more innings.
The innings has me insanely concerned. Like, that is bizarro world right there. So yeah, I'm gonna have to read some reports after we finish.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
Going on. Because like all the reports I did see is how electric he is, how amazing he is, but none of them factored in what's his workload like this year.
I've never heard.
Interesting,
and that goes back to us not being in the prospect realm. That's kind of where it hurts. I do try to pride myself being so tuned into teams and lineups and rosters, and yet I still overlook guys like this because I just don't either I just miss them because I don't understand the pedigree that follows them, or B, I might have even looked him up and saw, oh, this guy's not going to be up this year that much because look at the workload. Like, he's going to get. I figured he'd have half a year in the minors. I'm surprised. I don't understand the aggression here for the A's, unless they got the extra year of service time already. Maybe that's what it was. Just a service time thing.
Maybe that'd be the only reason why. They have no reason to spend money. They have no reason to go for Rookie of the Year. They have none of those things to gain.
Yeah. Well, Blackburn did have a setback, I believe, in his rehab assignment. So that was like one less guy that not that they had any reason not to bring up Miller, but it was just one less guy that's in the way. You know what I mean? So maybe that's part of it. I don't know.
I want to bring up one more FAAB acquisition because the rest is a lot of Pittsburgh Pirate guys and some other hot and cold. So it's that time of the year, like it's just big names for the most part. But this one stood out in a big way, and I'm a Giants fan, and I've noticed this a bit. But you follow lineups, so I'm curious what you're thinking here. J.D. Davis of the San Francisco Giants is picked up in 110 leagues, as high as 121. I never would have bid that high, as low as $1. He's playing a lot. I'll be honest. Like he's like they're moving VR all over. They're moving everybody all over. But they're playing JD a ton at third base, which is surprising because initially it was first base and DH and whatnot. He's got 4 homers, 13 RBIs, hitting 311. The StatCast numbers are great, like they've always been with JD Martinez. It's just a matter of get him on the field and he'll be productive. I'm concerned. I don't know if this sticks because VR is playing fine. JD's actually playing better than VR, to be honest. But you still have Estrada. Estrada played left field on Monday. They're all over the diamond. So what's your thoughts on this JD Davis? Because I was surprised to see 110 leagues. It could just be as simple as you look at the Giants this week. They face they play 3 lefties. They play 7 games. So he'll get a good run there. But what's your thoughts on this one?
So Davis was a guy that I actually drafted with my final round pick in my main and then ended up dropping him because the first week, I think it was he played only 3 against. So if you look at just the righty matchups, Davis played against just 1, 2, 3 of the first like 6 or 7 righties they faced. That was the issue. He was platooning. JD Davis was straight up platooning to start the year with a couple, fill-in starts here and there. Obviously, that's why he got 3. That's why he even got 3. It was actually 1 of 4, then 2 straight, then 1 off, then 3 straight. So it's actually he was only 1 of 4 initially. I'm trying to think where did the injury go? What happened? I don't know what happened. Oh, you know what? I think they started straight up. They weren't platooning Wade, I think, fully initially. Anyway, this is another team that does this. If a player's running hot, they'll let the Giants better than anybody. They'll let that player run through their hot streak. And Davis, last week, I think over the last 10 games, they've had like 5 lefties. Yep. So that's part of the appeal here. Is Davis went through a whole a great setup of lefties, and then on top of that, he's been performing. So they let him play versus the righties, and that's kind of what happened. Is that right place, right time? Jock Peterson's injured. They have Austin Slater, who's also a short side platoon guy, out. There's more at bats to be had here right now than typically. They just called up Ramos, I believe, last week to help out with, so he can help platoon here too.
Well, he's in there because Conforto's banged up.
So right now there are injuries helping him out, but all things considered, there's always a spot available for anybody playing good baseball. And JD Davis is hitting the ball well. He's going to play until he cools down. So ride the hot streak with him. But the second he cools down, he's not a mustache guy. He becomes a guy you move on from. And you'll pick him up 3 times this year. I guarantee it. Easily. So don't get too attached to him is what I'm getting at. But hey, maybe it sticks. Yeah.
That's why I was like $121. Like, no, like I get it if you wanted to use him to stream, pay a couple bucks for whatever. I get it. There's too many mouths to feed there, and he wasn't one of the main mouths. So it's a hot streak thing. And when he's hot, he's very, very good. Like I'd actually wish it'd be a full-time thing. I'd be all for it. I just don't. It'd be at the expense of David VR, and I think they want David VR out there. So that's what it feels like to me. So I'm kind of confused on that one.
I think VR has the better glove is kind of the important part there too. That's kind of what people and I got better at it this year. It's a big one. I'll shout out to, oh my goodness, Ryan Venancio at Armbarn or whatever it is. I forget. It's
at Van Armbarn.
Van Armbarn. Thank you. I should know this better. But yeah, so he was one guy that over the years always harped on defense, and I'm like, it was a weak spot. Like I didn't factor defense enough into my fantasy analysis. Now I factor it in like as part of it. It's like second nature just to look at, because defense matters so much for real life teams that we kind of overlook it and just think, well, this guy's not going to play much because whatever. But wait, he's playing over this guy. Why? This guy has a better bat. Oh, because the glove matters, especially now. Take away the shift, you need a good defensive shortstop more than ever. That's why Bobby Dalbec, the whole one game he did it, there's a reason why he didn't go back. You know what I mean? like as much as there was a spot for him, so to speak, there really wasn't. So that's why it's like defense now, especially with the shift rules, probably means more than it ever has. And we as a whole community need to be better at factoring that in our analysis when we're trying to project playing time, thinking, well, why is this guy not playing anymore and playing enough? Oh, well, he plays the field like he's blind. You can't do that. You can't play the field like you can't see.
No, I'm 100% with you on that one. Let's move on to our personal ad drops of the week. If you have those close by, if not, I have mine. I can go first. It's up to you.
You can go first. I'll pull mine up here in a second.
Okay, so one of my first OCs, I added Hunter Gaddis, dropped Clark Schmidt 16-13. I've been out on Clark Schmidt. Tried dropping him last week. It didn't happen. Gaddis was mediocre at best on his first start this week. He's got a two-step, and we'll see. And then a guy I love even longer than just the Colorado series, Rodolfo Castro. I did drop David VR in that scenario. This is a 12-team league, so you can do that. $12 to $9 with the backup big. I like Castro a lot, especially with that shortstop eligibility. He'll be second, short, and third pretty soon. In my second OC, I added Hunter Gaddis, dropped Matt Strom 17-12, added Ryan Nelson, dropped Rafael Montero 9-0 in that league. I think Ryan Nelson is a very, very nice, interesting person, cheap-wise right now. And then in my third OC, I added Brad Keller, dropped Nick Pavetta 24-0, no backup bid. And then I literally put a keep him honest bid on Edward Julian. I did drop Joey Weimer. That hurt, but he's been struggling. I could see him leaving the team pretty soon. Edward Julian got him for $18 with no backup bid. OCs are fun, folks. OCs are a lot of fun. Like literally anything can take place in those. And yeah, that's I'll leave the other ones to the imagination. Those are my OCs. What were your bids?
So the one place, just to remind everybody who's listening, I do 15 teamers, and the one place I'm doing FAAB this year is a minus our little OCQ that we team up for is my main event. So right now I made 5 moves, all for $41. So I went bargain shop. I went to the budget, the bargain bin. And Jake Berger unopposed 14-0, which I was surprised just given the hot start. And when Berger's running hot, you put him out there. You get him, you play him. I know Yohan Moncada might be back this week, so I got that was kind of a concern. But the first half of the week, it lines up really favorable for him, if memory, or it was. I think it was all week in general. He has 3 lefties this week, I believe. It was 3 and 3. Yeah, 3 lefties, 6 total matchups, and he's known to hit lefties better. And the 3 lefties he's facing is Bailey Falter, Josh Fleming, and McClanahan. So obviously one tough one there, but I was willing to take a shot on the fact that he's facing 2 really weak lefties running hot, and I could use a little pop in my lineup. I was surprised that he was unopposed, just given, again, the depth of these leagues, but I'll take it. Kerry Carpenter, a guy I've been rooting for because I'm targeting home runs, I'm targeting RBIs. Carpenter's been towards the middle of the lineup. I picked him up, dropped Nick Gordon, and that one hurt because you know how much we love Nick Gordon this year.
Yeah.
And I moved on from him, and it was 14-11, so it was a good bid, finally a good bid. But yeah, it's a matter of just chasing. He had 6 righties this week, and obviously some weaker righties like Gaddis, like Battenfield potentially. And speaking of Battenfield, I got him 5-0 unopposed as well. But it was just a matter of it was the fact that Carpenter got another hit. It was another. Let's see what happens because I want to see what Battenfield has to offer. And plus, it was a good matchup. I considered streaming him. I considered really heavily to stream him against Detroit because it just made sense. And he lines up. I believe he lines up for 2 starts next week. So that was part of why I went after him. Yan Gomes, I just needed a second catcher. Jake Rogers was my second catcher for reference. Got him 6-4. Another good bid. There was one other guy that needed a catcher in my league. And then I mentioned the unopposed $2 Spencer Turnbull. And a lot of it was just because Turnbull had a really good outing against the Jays. That caught my attention. I looked. He utilized that slider more than ever this year. He leaned heavier on a 3-pitch mix and kind of dropped the usage of 2 of his pitches. So he kind of made changes and we saw results, and that was reason enough to be in on Turnbull, especially for $2. I mentioned it, the aforementioned Chris Bubich to get Turnbull. So I'm dropping, pitchers on bad teams for pitchers on bad teams. That's what I do. I like to target pitchers on bad teams, but it is what it is. I mean, obviously that's what we're picking from. Turnbull, we've seen success from in the past. I'm kind of excited. It's blind optimism though, because it's 1 start, but it was against the Jays and it wasn't against a bad Jays team. I think the Jays were actually hitting. So to slow them down while they're hitting, it was worthy of at least putting him on my bench and see what happens. Because if he has another good start, he's not going to be cheap this week.
Yep, that's very fair. I drafted Turnbull in a lot of places and dropped him already, but
well, that's
12-team leagues for you, so that's fun.
Even if he has another good start, he's still no more than a streamer in 12s. Yeah, like 100%. It is what it is. Like these are 15s. That's why you have to keep that in mind in terms of what you're targeting. So I went to the bargain bin this week to try to address kind of just some early quote unquote, not even real needs. I can't call them. You can't really say they're needs, but what they are is just something you kind of see weakness in. I'm taking advantage of matchups and I'm trying to keep that going. So far, so good with my matchup picks. Well, and I've realized, I got some guys that although they might be better long term, I just gotta play this game of I'm streaming hot and cold, trying to keep it cheap. And yeah, these other guys, like you mentioned Keller, I was actually in on Keller, but I wasn't even the runner up on him. So I was gonna laugh because if I did get him, that was gonna be like $100 on Royals pitchers in 2 weeks. That was just like growth. The idea of 10% of my FAAB budget, because it's $1,000 FAAB budget for those listening. 10% being on Royals pitchers was not part of the plan.
Feels dirty. That feels dirty.
But yeah. So anyway, yeah, those were mine. If anybody ever have any questions, please feel free to just hit me up on Twitter about it. But yeah, that's where I was at with those.
All right, let's take a couple listener questions here. I sent you some of the DM ones that I received. Taylor Johnson's got a couple. We'll do quick hitters on these. Is it too early to cut Josh Naylor for a guy like Brett Rooker? I know Rooker's been on fire, but I'm keeping Josh Naylor.
Same. I looked into Rooker. Same swing and miss issues, just hot streak. Great at barreling the ball. Always has a hard hit rate, but Rooker, I think it's a hot streak. I would be keeping Naylor for sure.
Yeah. How about Justin Turner versus Isak Paredes for the rest of the season? I'm a big Isak fan, but I still think Turner's probably the better fantasy player.
I'm gonna go Isak just based on upside.
I'm fine with that. I'm
just going for the upside, and you know me, I've been questioning Isak's playing time since day one, and I'm still taking him because I'm just betting on the upside. If you want to go safety, Turner is probably the safer answer for sure, but I want upside. I want to take a shot on a guy that I think could be difference making, and he has that potential, whereas Turner has that floor.
For sure. MKB Fantasy Baseball asks, is Brett Beatty an everyday player? If so, what's your season-long outlook on him? If we were ranking again today, how would you rank him against third basemen, and what would his ADP be? Let's just keep it simple. Is he an everyday player, and how do you see him playing the rest of the season?
So, everyday player. Yes. He will be. He has the quick and easy opportunity to hit his way up. I actually pulled up the ADP from main events for third base. And I think Beatty would be roughly around, I don't know, probably close to Jordan Walker, Max Muncy range, Matt Chapman, if we were drafting today. So that puts him about pick 120-ish from the looks of things, 120, 130-ish, which I feel like that's a fair estimate of where to put him because he probably, and then just because of thinking about how people were thinking about in draft season, if Jordan Walker was getting that type of hype, you got to think Beatty would be really close behind him, right? So that's why I'm like right in that range of like top 10 to 12 third baseman probably right now, how people would draft him. Maybe 13 because Bohm, Chapman would get ahead of him. He would fit in right behind Bohm before Hayes and Miranda. So yeah, I think he'd be a top 13, 14 guy. Some guys would be higher, lower, etc. You get my point. So if we're drafting today, I'd say between picks 120, 140. And yes, he's an everyday guy. He should be on your roster just for the upside alone.
Yep, I'm with you. Beatty definitely should be. He was already pretty much gone in every OC. So yeah, he was long gone.
He was stashed in most places for sure.
Yeah. At JDub, the gamer JDub asks, buying Patrick Wisdom or selling high? I'm so conflicted on this one because I've written about him a lot lately, and I like the gains we're seeing. He still strikes out a lot, but a lot less than he was before, which is a big plus. It's early in the season, obviously, but the power is legit, always has been. He's playing every day. The playing time was a concern going into the season. You'll never sell him higher than right now, though, is the problem. That's the concern. Like, you could sell him right now and just like off this last week and probably get more than you'll get in the entire season for him. At the same time, I think this is obviously not as legit, but pretty darn legit. Like, this is there some really good improvements, I think. What's your thoughts on Wisdom? Should he be buying or selling Patrick Wisdom?
So Wisdom is crushing the ball, there's no doubt. However, he's doing Patrick Wisdom things. He's playing pretty much every day, but he's also crushing lefties and gets. I think yesterday was another lefty.
Yeah,
and he gets two. I think he gets 3 or 4 this week. That's why he was like a huge streaming target. I think he was already rostered in some leagues though, but he was a huge streaming target because of the matchup, the hot. And he runs hot and cold. But yeah, if you look at his, he's still hitting righties decently well this year. Obviously with a 928 OPS, but just a 222 batting average. For reference, that's like nothing compared to his lefty splits. Again, splits don't matter this early at all, but we're just talking about, I'm just the type of player he is, a 438 batting average against lefties, a 1,625 OPS against lefties. Like, he crushes lefties like no other. That's the thing. So I do think I still am kind of on I'm on the side of sell high. He's on a hot streak. I would definitely, honestly, he might be worth more than what you get. I don't know what you can get back for him, to be honest. He might just be worth riding out and dropping when he slows down because he's one of those guys just like JD Davis. You ride the heat waves and then and he'll be on your roster 3 or 4 times over the year. He's not a guy that is a mainstay on a roster. So if you can sell high, I would probably do it. Just know that you're going to be pissed off like 3 or 4 times this year when he goes off for like 10 home runs over like a 3-week period. But then when he's hitting 200, for like a month and a half, then you're not so mad.
100%. He's gonna have some very, very bad lows and some very, very nice highs. It's a matter of it's the old theory, like in Roto, you just want the end game stats. So you almost have to just leave him out there for the good and the bad and just wait and just say, okay, I'm gonna get the end of the season numbers. That's all I care about with Patrick Wisdom. Just don't even look. Don't even pay attention to what he's doing. But that's impossible because we're all annoyed by all the slumps and everything. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I would sell high as well. I'm really excited what we're seeing with him. It'd be awesome if it's one of those where maybe he does make more changes. Who knows? I don't think it's that great, but it's cool to see. That's for sure. But yeah, I'm with you on this one, Colonel. I'd sell high. All right, my friend. That'll wrap us up. Any final thoughts as we are heading into the week 4 FAAB? We got the Discord is blowing up with this Mason Miller talk. Like, it's pretty entertaining right now. It's all over Twitter. I can't wait to find out more about it. Some smart prospect people are saying 100 to 120 innings. A lot of people are like, how could he throw more than 50 innings? Like, there's just a million questions with what's going on. So that'll be a fun diatribe come FAAB night on Sunday. And I'm gonna, if any of my competitors are listening, there's a good chance you're gonna outbid me on him. I will keep him honest bid on him. I don't know if I'm gonna be overly aggressive. I'm not gonna. I'm pretty. I don't get me wrong. I can BS with the rest of these people on Twitter about my bids, but I'm not gonna lie. I'm cautiously optimistic. I just don't know if I'm gonna be that guy willing to spend the triple digits it's gonna take to get him. And that's the problem. I don't want to take a risk on a guy that has very limited track record in the minors with very limited inning potential. That's coming up already in April. That he could be shut down by the All-Star break. Don't get me wrong. From here to the All-Star break, he could be amazing. So that alone, like, I have to weigh these pros and cons. As of right now, though, I'm not thinking I'm going to be too aggressive. That could change. That's why you can listen to me all you want. But at the end of the day, right now, where I'm currently at on Tuesday, I'm very, very, very thinking less. I'm more pessimistic than I probably will be by the end of the week, especially when he goes out and shoves tomorrow. I'm telling you, it's gonna be 8 Ks in 5 innings. I'm telling you, 8 Ks, 5 innings, 2 earned runs on like a two-run home run or something stupid. And it's gonna be. Check this out. There's a tweet about Mason Miller. He threw 5 no-hit innings in his last start in the minors, where he threw 64 pitches. Both were career highs, the innings and the pitcher count. Yeah, this is baffling. I am baffled by this situation right now. This call up blows my mind. Maybe they just want him to get work at the highest level. He uses his innings in the bigs, I guess. He's dominating as he's not getting the competition he needs in the minors, it sounds like. But again, it's so limited. He didn't have a chance to. Maybe they utilize him as an opener or with an opener. That'd be kind of cool. Like, if he gets utilized second to an opener, he becomes more intriguing, because if he's in a 3-inning role, but as a second guy in, that actually opens up the potential for wins while not crushing your ratios and getting elite strikeouts. And he'll build from there. Maybe there's an opener situation. This could be interesting. It could be a lot more intriguing. I'm way more interested if he actually has an opener. If he doesn't, then there's no way I'm in, because I don't see him going deep into games. It's major league hitting. Sure, the first couple games he might do really well because hitters have to learn them. But beyond that, well, that's what the tweet was about. It was a Cubs reporter said if the Cubs can just work the count at all, he might be out by like the first or second inning. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's very true. So he's something to monitor for sure. But what else is fun to monitor is the work Mike Kurland does. So, Mike, remind everybody where they can find you and what you got going on. Oh, no. Just find me at Twitter, on Twitter at Mike_Kurland. That's where I'll put everything. So it's easier that way. Make sure you guys check them out. Check out Game of the Edge Fantasy, that both of us are doing work over on Patreon with Michael Simeone and Jorge Montanez. And I am on Twitter at BDintric. Hope you guys have a great week. Back to you guys next week with another episode of Bench with Bubba and much more this week. But for now, this was your Week 3 FAAB Recap with Mike Kurland. Catch y'all later.